Hey guys, welcome to this live. We are going to be talking about Married at First Sight. So we are watching season 12, episode 9, and we are watching Atlanta because I know there's one going on somewhere else in the world, but we are focusing on Married at First Sight. Tonight, we're particularly talking about Chris and Paige and what we saw go down in this week's episode. Now, again, if you are watching this on replay, welcome. Remember to hit the subscribe button, guys, and the likes. Get this video out and let's really just get into Married at First Sight. So this week, guys, we saw a lot go down in Married at First Sight. And I think one of the first things that I think we should just talk about is the double-mindedness. And that's what I've really themed tonight's live about, because I think double-mindedness is one of those things that really makes relationships and knowing what to do in them really something that kind of trips people up. So we're going to kind of take a look tonight. And we're going to start with Paige. And the reason we're starting with Chris and Paige is I think we've all been trekking along these weeks. We've all probably felt I've heard triggered. People are like, this is abuse. Some people are like, this is just mayhem happening on our TV. But there are so many good relationship and life lessons that we can all learn from through watching this. So I really, on my channel, if you're new to my channel, I talk all about really healthy relationships. And in there, we also look at some shows and we look for like teachable moments that we can all learn from when it comes to our relationships. So this week, I really thought, okay, let's go live and let's talk about what we have seen take place between Chris and Paige, because it's been a lot, guys. And I think one of the difficult things has been just being able to sit in your house watching it happen and almost wanting to say like, run the other way. So I think in this episode, we saw double-mindedness and we see that, what's his name? Chris's pastor comes and has a conversation with Paige. And one of the things that we see is that he's really honest about the double-mindedness that we've all seen, if you've been watching this, play out on our screens. Now, there are lots of different elements that I believe are weaved into some of Chris's behavior, but let's just focus on what the pastor said to start with. So welcome. Thanks for everyone who's joining. Let me bring up, just so I'll keep his face on the screen so we know who we're talking about. So let me just stop that share. I'm going to just bring up the pastor's image. And I really like that Chris's pastor or friend, and we'll get into all that went down on what happened on IG with Chris and his pastor, because it looks like that friendship or pastoral connection is severed. Or maybe not severed, but it's definitely got some damage and some breaks in it. So we'll get down to that after. But what I really enjoyed was the fact that this man, though he is on Chris's, let's say, friendship side, he was honest enough to say, look, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And I think that that scripture in itself is just so powerful, because when you are double-minded, when you are not sure what to do, what direction to go, everything becomes a mess. And unfortunately, the people connected to you, they can also end up in quite a messy situation. And we are seeing this happen with Paige. Now, unfortunately, last week, I really felt like Paige was full of energy saying, you know, I'm leaving him. This is over. This doesn't serve me any longer. And then we saw this week that actually Paige and Chris ended up in a situation where they pretty much were willing to kind of restart and reconnect and start over, which is shocking to many of us who are watching this and are almost like, how did we end up back here? But this is what I really have been talking about in terms of, some will call it soul ties. Some will say this is a cycle of, you know, trauma bonds and a cycle of abuse. This can kind of sometimes play out in relationships, and where you almost are stuck in this kind of hot and cold situation with a guy, or a girl. Sometimes they're nice to you, and then sometimes they're cold. Sometimes they're really horrible, mean, calculated, manipulative, like you're constantly being pushed and pulled from pillar to post with this person. And this is really what I think in this series we've really seen play out. And this is not something that is just allocated to Chris and Paige. This is stuff I feel happens in many relationships that many of us are in. And I think watching it live and seeing someone else go through it is like very eye-opening, but I hope also very educational for all of us, because there are many friends, people you may not even realize, who are going through these situations. And we are hopeful that through watching this, people will start to recognize the acts of manipulation that are literally being played out by this individual, in my opinion. So let me see. Now, guys, I have not done a live for a little while, so I'm going to try again to share my screen. So give me one sec. Let me see if I can bring this. Okay, let me see if I can bring this up. Hide? No. Yes. Okay, there he is. All right, so this is Chris's pastor. And now we've seen that actually in this episode, Chris was really unhappy, or he tried not to play like he was unhappy, but Chris was really uncomfortable, let's use that word, with the fact that his pastor had reached out and had a conversation with Paige and pretty much told Paige not only that this guy, Chris, was actually engaged years before to another individual. Not the one we've all been going off on the internet about, but another lady years before. And even just that revelation of information was just almost like another major red flag that this is not the type of relationship maybe that you want to really be pursuing. So when we saw this whole conversation between Paige and Chris's pastor, it was really nice just to see that actually this person could be honest enough to say, look, even though I know this guy, even though I'm here pretty much because I'm connected to this guy, I see a lot of his behaviors as very double-minded. And I think that is in itself sometimes, and I did a video today talking about confirmations we sometimes get, whether we say it's from God, whether we say it's from whatever we call it, we get confirmation sometimes about some of those inner deep things that we're thinking about. Sometimes we're thinking, look, I need to leave this situation, or this situation doesn't feel right. And then something comes along and confirms it. Sometimes it comes in the form of a person. Sometimes it comes in the form of other things. But when it's confirmed, you know it, you feel it in yourself. And I really felt like Paige more than likely sat with that pastor. She felt like, yes, now I've got even more information about the fact that he was engaged before even Mercedes. And again, we see by the end of this episode that she did a 360 and ended up staying, or ended up restarting, let's say, with Chris. Now, again, if you've already watched the video I released today, you will see that in the next week sort of little flash that we saw, we see that actually Paige and Chris look like they might be cozying up together in that flat or condo that they all meant to be using. And it kind of gives you that mixed message of, hold on, last week we saw him with his ex, and this week we now see him opening up the lines of communication again to say, hey, let's restart. And this can be when you're in sort of like these toxic, manipulative relationships. This can be the dynamic. 1 minute you're almost out the door, and the next minute you're pulled right back in. And this is what I think I've seen playing out time and time again on our screens with Paige and Chris. And what it made me think about, and again, guys, I always say on my channel, I am not someone who can diagnose anyone with narcissistic personality disorder. But when I'm watching this show, that does come to my mind. So I kind of went away and I was just like, okay, let's think about this realistically. All right. This young lady is in a situation where she is definitely experiencing a lot of mixed messages, and people who tend to sometimes do this, it's not because they're not sure of what they want. It's actually a form of control and manipulation. And Sometimes people don't like to use those words. Sometimes people don't want to feel like, no, I'm not being manipulated. But this is what I feel is definitely at play. And it really does lead me to start to think about more so narcissistic traits that we see in individuals, we see in people sometimes in relationships like this, where they're just almost constantly going from this person being really nice to them suddenly, and then this person being really cold and almost abusive in some ways. So let me now just go into what I wanted to speak about, which really is the dynamic between Chris, Paige, and his pastor this week. Because on IG, and I don't know if everyone has seen the Instagram post that came out where Chris really went for his pastor this week on Instagram, and a really great content creator, Little Black Book, he did a video talking about, the message that actually the fact of the matter is Chris now called his pastor out as really being a fake and a clown. And he went on to kind of just basically really say that this guy was, acting up for the cameras. And, he was trying to basically do all of this on camera to try and gain support for his church and all this other stuff. And basically, it was almost like a smear campaign of his friend or his pastor. And he basically denounced him on Instagram saying, he's not any pastor of his. And it just let me see that, again, we're seeing behaviors from this man, Chris, that is highly concerning. And it's the kind of behavior that you see from sometimes a child. And it really brought to mind those type of manipulators or those type of people who they will literally go after anybody who tries in their mind to try and hold them accountable to something or to try and actually call out bad behavior. You end up on the firing line. And this is what I personally felt like I saw happen on Instagram. Because you see how very quickly Chris just switched from someone who he was telling us was his pastor, someone who he was telling us was his friend. We already saw in weeks before, this guy had no regard for how he was speaking with his pastor only last week. And then within days, we see on Instagram that, hey, I've denounced this pastor. He's this and that and the other. And you see this happen often. Again, if you know anything about narcissism, and in my own opinion, I definitely believe in my lifetime, I have met some narcissists. They have not got diagnoses, but I'm telling you, I feel like I've experienced and met some. And it really was one of those things where I thought to myself, wow, the quick switch between how Chris was initially with this is my pastor, this is the man who's married us, and to complete disrespect and disregard. This is like he just devalued this man online, calling him out as a clown, a fake pastor, all these things. And this can sometimes be behavior that we see happen in narcissistic individuals sometimes. And I'm not, again, calling Chris out as a narcissist. No, I'm not. But because I don't have the qualification. But it really brought to mind the type of behavior where we do see often that they can kind of just switch. And 1 minute you're in their good books, 1 minute you're their bestie, and the next minute they are willing to throw you under the bus. They are willing to go out there in public and destroy your name. And they don't even feel no way, because the minute that they sense someone is almost trying to damage the image or the false idea of who they think they are, or the false idea of the self-importance they've given to themselves, if they think you're out there trying to damage their reputation, they themselves can very quickly turn. And this is what I feel like we saw take place between Chris and his relationship with his pastor, which pretty much just went down the drain. So again, it really brought to mind how quick, in some ways, Chris was ready to disregard his pastor and pretty much disown him the minute that his pastor was calling out his bad behavior. And that is a common thing with people who are very toxic, very manipulative, and even might have a lot of narcissistic traits. So let me just go into the comments, guys. TT Glam, hi, hello, nice to see you all. I keep looking down, guys, sorry, because I've got my laptop literally stuck down on the table. But yeah, lovely to meet you. Hi, TT Glam. Hi, Sandy Moon. Let me try and just quickly go through the comments. Hello. Oh, thank you so much. She says, oh, thank you so much. I've actually been enjoying putting out these videos when I get around to them. I have so many currently that are in the process of being edited. So keep a lookout for the new content that's coming out. But, you know, this is a classic, typical strategy of people who are very manipulative, are very toxic. And the minute you tell the truth, the minute you out them, the minute you try to say, listen, what you've done there was a step too far. The minute you try it, they literally are willing to discard you, just cut you off, tell other people about you and whatever, however bad they can discredit you. And that's what I saw. And it's really what led me to want to tonight talk about narcissistic discard, because we kind of saw something play out in a similar dynamic between last week when Chris was trying to actually say that not only was Paige being rude when he was sitting there with Mercedes, he was adamant, Paige is rude. No, I don't like the way she's talking to me. He was just going off on one, trying to deflect the fact that actually these two ladies were having a little dialogue about him and his nonsense behavior. And the minute you start to call out the nonsense, the minute you're almost trying to hold them to, to account for what they've done, that's the minute that you see this pullback. That's the minute that they almost try to deflect and try to discredit you, call you names, devalue you, get people to see you as something that you're not. And that is why when you start to stand in your truth and actually sometimes try and actually hold people who are very manipulative or toxic, they just don't like it. And it's just another good sign that if somebody is really unable to hear truth or take accountability for their behavior, pretty good sign you might not want to, connect with that type of individual in that way. Now, yes, somebody today, I think one of my subscribers, and I don't know if you're on JL, but if you are watching the replay, you'll hear this. I saw your comment about soul ties, and I have a video that is coming out about soul ties, guys. But one of the things I don't want to do when I talk about soul ties is with what we're seeing play out between Paige and Chris, I just don't feel like just naming this as the only reason she's going back is solely because of a soul tie. I just think it might miss the mark about some of the undercurrent kind of toxic, manipulative, even somewhat abusive things that emotionally, feel very abusive, in my opinion. I don't want to overlay it just as, oh, it's a soul tie. No, there's also some elements of manipulation, control, and abuse that I feel might be also at play in this. So yes, I think soul ties is part of it because yes, she has opened her heart, her mind, her will, her emotions. Her soul is connected to this guy, unfortunately, and they've consummated the marriage. And yes, it does forge what we normally say is a soul tie. And on top of that, what complicates it is this element of almost toxicity, of control, of manipulation. That element combined with a soul tie really complicates the whole thing. And that's why on my channel, I do not try and downplay this part of the toxicity, the manipulation, and even in some ways the abuse, because it's too easy to just say it's simply a soul tie. And one of the things I think JL also mentioned about like healing, how do we kind of break these soul ties? And one of the hardest parts to trying to break a soul tie, from what I know and from what I've experienced, is you normally kind of have to accept that you need to distance yourself. You have to let go of the items, the person, like you have to create that separation, because you can't have one foot in and one foot out. It doesn't work like that. So even to begin really the process of healing and really moving on, you have to let this go. And that's why being in this double-minded place with someone is not helpful. It doesn't help you really begin the process of, doing that deep healing work that you're going to need to do. So I hope that answers your question if you see this, JL. Anyway, so guys, Berta's eye view, she says, he's become a drug to her. Yes, it's, that's a great analogy. It's so hard when you're almost in this sort of relationship cycle with someone like this, because you're almost just stuck. Like, you're not stuck, but I get that feeling of like, you don't feel like you can get out, because every time you might just almost overcome that high feeling, they're back. They're ready to get you high again on them. They know how to reel you right back in, and you're back on that cycle. And I think this is a really good time, guys, to actually talk about, I want to touch on the topic of narcissism tonight, because I just think we need to just talk about it. So let me just see if I can. And I really with me, I like a good quote that we can all work from, because then we're kind of all on the same page. So I went and I just had a quick look. Let me see if I can find this, guys. Now, guys, I'm trying to manage my live by myself. And I think I've seen it. Let me see if I can add it to the stream. Yes. Okay, fine. So tonight, guys, we're going to talk about narcissistic discard. I think mainly because we've seen how, Chris fluctuates between just cutting off his pastor, denouncing him, doing the whole smear campaign, all that stuff. Now, again, I'm not calling Chris a narcissist. I do not have the qualifications to diagnose this person, but I'm talking about narcissism because I think watching this show, this has come to mind, and I think it will be good for us to just get into. So TT Glam's like, yeah, let's talk about it. Yes, let us talk about it. So, right, let me see if I can actually now change the slide. Yes, I can. All right, guys, so let me try and bring this up. So maybe we can use, hopefully you can all see this. I'm going to try and make it bigger, but I don't know how. So I'm going to just try and read it. Hopefully you can all see this. If you can't, just type in the chat and I'll try and make it a little bit bigger on the screen, I think. I have no idea. All right, guys. So this is the definition I took from Mayo Clinic. I think it's a really good definition, or a little summary of narcissistic personality disorder. And it's one of a type of personality disorder. And it is a mental condition in which people have an inflated sense of their own importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration. They have troubled relationships and they lack empathy for others, all right? But behind this mask of extreme confidence lies a fragile self-esteem that's vulnerable to the slightest criticism. Now, guys, this is so important to understand. And I really just love the quote because it's short, it's to the point, and you kind of get it. Like, we've probably met people who are like this. And again, it's not really about Paige or Chris. It's not really about trying to diagnose people. It's really about us educating ourselves about these topics, because there are individuals who are this, and they are connecting with people every day. And it is just about you knowing or having some understanding of how to navigate these individuals, okay? So this is important, I feel, because the slightest criticism can really have these people flip out. And this is, I put together this little quick relationship cycle. And this is just a common relationship cycle. So you kind of, when it comes to narcissism, And you kind of go through this spate of, you know, the love bombing phase and the idealization. And then you go into a devaluation phase where after all the love bombing, after all the attention that they're showing you, you know, making you feel so good, you almost feel like, oh, this person's great. Yeah. Switch. It goes from nice to cold, nice to mean, nice to even sometimes abusive. Like, it's such a switch. They can become really attacking of you, criticizing of you. The switch is so scary for people because they're almost sucked into feeling and believing this person's so nice, so good, and then it happens. Okay. And they can be people who just use a lot of put downs. They might do things that feels very emotionally abusive or psychologically abusive. You know, there's lots of different ways that they start to devalue you. You can go through phases of feeling like you're being gaslit. You can go through phases of feeling like, you know, you're trying to tell them how you feel when they do something and they're saying, no, I never did that. What are you talking about? I never said that. Completely deny your reality. Like, they can go through phases where they minimize all your experiences. Like, they go through parts where they almost rageful and really rotten towards you. And when I say rage, I'm not talking about average anger. I mean rage where you are left feeling like this person is unstable. Okay. And this is like generalizations, guys, you know, but what I'm trying to say is this devaluation phase is really crucial to how it keeps people sometimes hooked in that sort of feeling of like, I'm on this merry-go-round because I know it's not nice when they're in this phase, but you're almost hoping for the other phase that you remember, which was the love bombing phase when things were good. So this is how the hook happens. And you're almost rotating between nice periods and then really bad periods. And the last part is the discard. And that's what I really wanted to talk about today, because we've seen that last week, and I'm not going to go through all the common narcissistic traits today, but what we saw is the discard. And last week, Chris came with his ex-fiance, mother of his child, and he came to have this sit down with his wife and pretty much say, you know, yeah, we're going to make this happen or whatever. We're going to raise our baby, because we know that his ex-fiance was like, I'm not going to connect with him. I'm not going to be with him or whatever. Who knows what that is going to look like? And yes, I've seen all the recent comments about Mexico and where they are. I'm not even going to get into all of that. But we saw this dynamic play out where Chris was like, I'm basically divorcing you. I'm leaving you. My ex-fiance and I, this was the impression he gave, you know, we're going to get back together. We're going to raise our child. And then we saw this whole foolishness last week with the sit down, and actually a whole different message came out. But the impression that he was still trying to give was, I'm letting you go. And that is the discard. After all the craziness where they have you going back, forth, they have you almost in this dancing space, they then discard you. Okay. But with these particular individuals, guys, they don't just discard, like sometimes they don't just discard for good and they've disappeared forever. You can be in this kind of holding pen. I'm going to call it the holding pen, because it's almost like you're in this stuck place where you're trying to almost figure out, hold on, you're leaving. Okay, I got to kind of get over this now. I got to move forward. And just as you think you're about to move forward, just as you think you broke free. Okay, I'm done with the madness. Yeah, okay, he's gone. They're back. And this is what we've seen again and again playing out. In my opinion, this is what I've seen playing out. Like constantly, this back and forward. And then they try to discard you. Oh, I'm going to divorce you. Oh, I'm leaving you, or whatever. But then they hover around. They find little ways to almost just do that check-in. So they can just check your temperature. So they can just be like, oh, hey. And you saw, you know, this week is like when she went to the barbecue or I can't remember. She went to Jacob's house. Paige went to Jacob's house this week. And we saw that, you know, she was with the other couples and she was telling the girls, you know, I got a phone call from him. And that's how it starts, guys. even when they're discarding you, even after they've put you down, called you all the names, said they're going to leave or whatever the case may be, this next step of trying to throw you and the relationship away, they really half the time, sometimes they do, but they half the time don't. They throw it away to an extent, but they always are hovering somewhere, and they reappear at points when you feel like you're leaving, you've got yourself together, okay, fine, I'm ready to move forward. They're back, they reappear, and they do this almost like clockwork. It's just ridiculous. So this week, I had already in my head last week thinking, let's just see how he's going to worm his way back in. And boom, lo and behold, Chris is back. And this is just why, again, it's so important to understand this cycle for yourself. And it's not to say that any of us are going through this, but it is to say it's good to have an awareness of this, so that if you come up against these kind of individuals or you see these patterns of behavior, you don't have to be in this foolishness, or you don't have to be a part of this. You know that the only way to really, really keep these sort of individuals away from you is for you to have really strong boundaries and really be able to sift out this kind of nonsense fast and keep your distance from them. Don't try to fix them. Don't try to think you're going to tell them like, this is some of the behavior you're doing is this or that. Don't waste your time. Just keep your distance and keep it moving. Sorry, guys. I actually had something go down the wrong way. It's so British of me. I've got a cup of tea. Can you imagine? Sorry. So guys, that's just my thoughts around narcissistic and discard, or narcissistic discard, because it's something that happens often. And unfortunately, people get caught. Oh, someone's like, pardon, thank you. All right, let me go to the comments and just see what is going down. So let's see what everyone's saying. Okay. All right. So people are talking a little bit about, okay, Scorpio Forever said, I dealt with narcissists. Yep, scary. Yes, it can be so scary dealing with these kind of individuals at times. But the important thing is for you to recognize that behavior and start to think of how you keep yourself safe and distance away from them. Let's see. Okay, so shall we talk about who's next? Who next? Because I tell you, talking about Chris and Paige, sometimes it can bring you to exhaustion. It's not to say that we don't empathize and we don't sympathize with Paige, because I know that is a difficult situation to be in. But there is a point where you have to just say, you know what, I'm worth more. I deserve more, and actually hold yourself to that standard and walk away. It's hard. I'm sure there's many ladies like myself who've gone through heartbreak and all sorts of things, but you have to get to a place in your life where you decide, no, enough is enough. And I know at some point, I hope she will get there. But it looks like we're going to be going through another week of something with these two. So yeah, let's see. Okay, so shall we talk about Brianna and Vincent? What's your thoughts, guys? Okay, so someone says, okay, let's see. Brianna and Vincent, however, he needs to find a way to overcome his trauma. It seems like stemming from his childhood or past relationships. Okay, TT Glam makes a really good point. And I think it's in regards to Brianna and Vincent. Oh, yeah. Sorry, my fiance has just come to tell me, remove the PowerPoint if you're going to just talk normal. Guys, I really need assistance. I'm just not used to live streaming, but I will get there. Anyway, yes, TT Glenn, let's talk about Brianna and Vincent this week. Now, the good thing is they seem to be really connecting and they seem to be growing. The thing that I really I just felt like the salsa situation didn't need to go left the way it went left for Vincent. And it made me really think, maybe he has had experiences maybe earlier in his childhood or somewhere in his teens or somewhere where he doesn't like to feel like he's not good at something, where maybe he's been, laughed at or criticized. I really was like, it would be good for him to really unpick that a little bit more, because the first time he got upset about Champagne Vinny comments, I was like, okay, it seemed to me very extreme to almost decide that you were going to leave the house. And I did a video on that, and you can probably check out my video, Single-Minded Behaviors, because the idea of just, I'm going to walk out when you're already married, I just was like, yeah, he's still he's got to get some control around that. But then this week, getting so upset about the salsa, and he was serious, guys. And I was a bit like, what's happened? What has happened that it's so hard? Like, he's so hard on himself to do his best. He wants to do his best. He really does. But then he gets so upset with himself and not being good at it. And I just thought to myself, really good. I know Dr. Viviana's going to be seeing the couples next week, it looks like. So it'll be really interesting to see, what advice she gives. And hopefully he goes away and unpicks and understands that a little bit more, in my opinion, because if that becomes a pattern where anytime we're doing something fun or we're doing something and, you get so upset with yourself, it's going to almost ruin those special moments with his wife. So I really hope he definitely, gets that looked at and just kind of makes sense of it. All right, guys. So Bri and Vincent, I wanted to also talk today about Eric and Virginia. And Eric and Virginia are one of those couples, guys, that there's a lot that you could say. There's always a lot that you could say. But what I thought was really useful this week, I'm not going to focus on all the other things. I've seen lots of different things in them. But this week, I think Virginia mentioned the fear of abandonment. And she spoke about the fact that she came from a difficult beginning. And her childhood, she saw divorce, and she's seen a lot of not great examples, let's say, of a healthy relationship. And that in itself can be very impactful on your adult relationships. And I really wanted to focus on that, really, about this couple more so, because I think even in the work I do in my own lived experiences, guys, and maybe I need to do a story time on this at some point, but I am definitely a child who is a child of divorce, and my parents, definitely their divorce and their attempts to co-parent after divorce definitely has had an impact on me and my adult relationships. And I really think that this will be a good couple that maybe might at least bring these discussions to the surface, because many people are children of divorce who are now adults trying to navigate their own relationships, and they haven't always got the template, like a good example or good role models of how to do this. And also they have their own sometimes unresolved or unprocessed or unhealed trauma from those earlier experiences. So when she mentioned, she has some struggles around fear of abandonment, she has some struggles around fear of rejection, for me, it really resonated in the sense of, for me, getting to a place in my adult life where I had to accept that, no. My parents' divorce absolutely has had an impact on my adult relationships. And I had to take time to make sense and unpick how it's impacting me and how it was showing up in my behaviors or my, things that I maybe struggled with in my earlier dating or adult relationships. And this, I hope, is going to be something that as we see Dr. Viviana, work with these couples, maybe there'll be some more discussions about it, because I don't think people always realize just how your childhood has so much influence on sometimes what is playing out in our adult relationships. So I just thought it was a really good point. Let me see. I don't know how people feel about if these two are going to make it. I mean, what's your predictions? Me, I'm a little bit like, this is it's going to be a testing moment for, I think, Eric and Virginia, because there are some stark differences. Let's just say that. Let's see what the comments say. Yeah, she's been really... they're talking about Brianna and Vincent. Yes, I think there's been a lot of Brianna making... trying to, help Vincent and all of these different things. But Lord knows it's going to take Vincent to kind of look into what's going on for him. All right, guys. So who else is next to talk about? Who else? Shall we talk about Jacob and Haley? Lord. Jacob and Haley, guys. This week, I mean, actually, I'm going to get to Jacob and Haley last. Let's go to Clara and Ryan. Guys, can someone tell me? And I don't know this, so this is why I need to hang out with you a lot more, because I'm like, does anyone know if maybe Ryan has, he actually ever had a sexual relationship? I don't know if I've missed it or if he's already shared this information or that, because there seems to be this sort of, it's not happening from what Clara's letting us know. And I wondered, I was wondering, maybe he hasn't. Yeah, someone says, yes, let's talk about, okay, TT Glam's really active. But I'm just really like, has this person had an actual sexual relationship where, because there's some blockage there. And in my mind, I'm thinking maybe Ryan's just waiting until decision day when he knows he has made the decision to really commit to Clara. And that's when he's going to, really open up that department of the relationship. Because I literally was like, what is going on? Unless maybe, and I don't know if he's a virgin. Yes, I don't know if it's been mentioned. I don't know if anyone knows. And I was thinking, I went back to try and watch the other episodes to see if he's, if it's been discussed, but it's not been said. And I'm starting to think, all right, hold on. I mean, is he a virgin? And maybe he's, struggling to just, make that next step in his marriage. I'm just like, does anybody know? Has he spoke about it? But obviously we don't know. But maybe he is also waiting until decision day, and he might then, just know that, yes, he's willing to make this commitment to Clara. And then whoop-de-doo, maybe that's when he's going to open the floodgates. But I can already see that this lady is, she's struggling. She's really struggling. Not struggling, but she's obviously wanting to explore the sexual side of their relationship. And I can only imagine that is, is creating some tension. Let's put it that way. But obviously, I've just checked the comments and it doesn't look like anyone's saying, yes, he's definitely a virgin. So, okay, maybe we just will not know. And I know that Ryan has come from kind of like let's say, a more Christian background. I mean, his parents are pastors. So maybe there's an element of maybe he did, save himself for marriage. Maybe he didn't. Maybe there's a little bit of not wanting to kind of, discuss those things on camera or do anything like that on a show like this, maybe because he doesn't want to bring any, shame or anything to his family. Who knows what's going on? So anyway, guys, if you do know what might be happening, if he is a virgin or not, it doesn't matter if he is. It just would give some context to why or what's not happening in that department anyway. All right, guys, so let's get to Jacob and Haley. All right, now Jacob and Haley are really okay. Let me just go to the comments. Okay, so TT Glam, she says Ryan did not mind doing other sexual activities, however, is not something he is straying away from. Okay, all right. So obviously he's confident in some areas. Okay, well, so I said, little man. Okay, I'm not going to read any more comments. All right, so let's talk about Jacob and Haley, because this is a relationship that has had many ups and downs. We've seen many different things happening with Haley, and I really feel like this, the topic of fear of intimacy really comes to mind when I think about Hayley. And even her friends last week described her as being, what was it? A commitment phobe. That was their words. And I just felt like when your friends who know you from back in the day or however many years, and they describe you as, a commitment phobe and that's your new husband, that's pretty clear that maybe she hasn't only just struggled in this process of married at first sight, but maybe she is actually always having these similar patterns and outcomes whenever she has been dating. And I know she says, I've not been in a relationship for 7 years or whatever the case may be, but her friend comment about being a commitment phobe really stood out for me, because I just felt like I can see this lady is struggling, and she's struggling to really just allow her guard down and allow herself. And even though she feels like it's Jacob who is, the difficult one, I don't think she is self-aware. She knows that she struggles in some ways in this department. So it is good to see that she's got that self-awareness. But I also felt like she really will need to actually probably do some work with someone to try and make sense of it and to find little strategies. And she is trying. I did feel like she tried this week, even though she was very honest about not feeling physically attracted to Jacob. She tried to kind of buy him back with a few clothes and a few things, but Jacob to me strikes me as actually a man who has some emotional insight and awareness, and he's willing to kind of go there and have the frank conversation, which is really good skills. And I think that he's very direct and not trying to shy away from stuff, whereas she is a little bit uncomfortable. She's a little bit awkward at times. She doesn't like to kind of, it's very hard. So when I was watching it this week, I felt like by the end, when they get to decision day, I don't feel like Jacob is going to stay. And I don't know, guys, tell me in the comments section if you feel like Jacob is going to stick. But I sort of feel like Jacob is a guy who's going to say, do you know what? I don't quite think I could do this for the rest of my life. Like, I feel like he is going to be the one, even if Hayley finally gets to the point where she thinks, maybe I could settle with Jacob. I really feel like Jacob is going to be like, no, not me. And he actually will be out. Now, I should have actually released my predictions video much earlier. But anyway, I'll just tell you here who I think might stay or might not stay. But I don't think Jacob is going to stay at all. Even if Hayley does, and I really doubt she will, Jacob is definitely going to be out. I could be wrong. Yes. Okay, so Berta's iView says Jacob needs to meet Hayley halfway a bit. Okay, in what way? Because I really feel like he is trying. Like, I feel like Jacob is actually trying. Phyllis Brown says, I feel like Hayley will be the first to leave. Okay, so basically, guys, are we saying that these two are just not going to make it? Like, either it's Jacob going first or Hayley, but this is no. Okay. I don't know what more. Like, there's always more that Jacob can do, definitely. But I feel like he's always willing to bend. He's quite like, even if he loses his cool for a minute, he's very apologetic. He'll try and bend. He'll try and do something. So I'm going to watch this space, but I'm not really holding out much hope, in all fairness, for those two to really commit to each other. But we'll see. We haven't got long to go. Who else who else are you predicting, guys? Just before we wrap this up, are you predicting that maybe Eric and Virginia will stay together by the time we see the end? Do you think they're going to stay together? Do you think Eric's going to be able to stick with this? Because I really feel like, it's going to be a growing relate. Like, that is going to require so much of both of them. And hopefully it does work if that's what they both want. But there are so many areas there that you can see almost could be like little mini bombs going off, you know, if something tips the balance. And I just think Virginia mentioning that fear of abandonment and how emotional she became when she was talking about, you know, her past experiences, the divorce and all these things. I just felt like, ooh, you know, him leaving and traveling for work and all that distance and separation. In my mind, when I saw them at the golf range, guys, I don't know about you, but I literally was like, she wanted to say more. Like he was trying to say like, no, it was good. It was fine. Yeah, everything worked out well. And it was like her whole face and body was trying to say, no, I didn't cope with this. This was not fine. Like I just felt like she is trying to say something more with her whole body language than what he was trying to hear. But again, I could be completely wrong. Let's see. Famika. Okay, let's see what Famika says. Jacob's got it going on, that house, and I think they should date within the marriage to build up to loving each other. Okay, good point. Famika also says Virginia wants security. Yes. And that is one of the things about going through or being a child of divorce. And it's not to say, guys, again, that because every child who's ever gone through divorce is going to have these issues. Not at all. It's not to make a wide generalization, but I do think when your sense of security is a bit rocked, maybe early in your childhood, with things like divorce or death or separation, it can have different effects as you get older. And really, maybe I will do this story time at some point, guys. But, you know, it really can leave you in that sort of need for security. And we all need security. We all need a sense of safety. But it also can leave you in that space of almost not wanting to, you kind of want this, you want the security, you want the love, you want the care, you want the everything, but then you're also scared of going after it because you don't want to experience the pain, you don't want to experience the feeling of rejection or someone leaving, all those things. So you're kind of in sometimes this push and pull dynamic, which can have definite implications for your adult relationships, but not always. So again, it's not a generalization to all. I think, okay, TT Glam says, I think that is why Virginia likes to surround herself with men. Okay, that's an interesting point, actually. She does have a lot of male friends. And I think, again, guys, this is why it's important to probably try and make sense of how your beginning might be also impacting your current, whatever dynamics are going on in your relationship, or even if you're in that sort of dating or getting to know people, or even just single and seeking. It's really good to kind of start to get an insight of, is there anything from my childhood that might also be affecting my relationships or showing up in ways that isn't so helpful? And yeah, hopefully, guys, we're going to see what Dr. Viviana says next week and what advice she gives these couples. And, you know, once again, it's going to be really interesting to actually start to see what Pastor Cal, well, we've seen what Pastor Cal said to Paige, but it'll be quite interesting to see what Dr. Viviana and Dr. Pepper and all these people say as we start to see them come on screen and give some conversations and advice, because I am very curious as to what these experts are going to say. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I am really, because after Pastor Cal and his commentary, I am like, okay, let's have a look and see what the other experts say, because, you know, sometimes I know it's not easy to, you know, say those things that need to be said sometimes, but it's also important. And when you are in a position of maybe being deemed an expert, people are really hanging on to your very words. So sometimes I do feel like, I hope these experts are able to say, look, what we are seeing here is dangerous, or what we are seeing here could teeter on abusive. What we are seeing here, we don't advise. Like, I'm waiting, guys, to see what they say, because again, it's really important that people call a spade and not try to dress it up as something else. And if you are seeing abuse, or you are, you know, basically witnessing quite detrimental things to people's emotional and mental well-being, you've got to just call it out. You can't just sugarcoat it. That's my opinion. So as I wrap this up, TT, yes. She says, I can't wait to hear what Dr. Pepper has to say to each of them. Yes, girl, I am with you. Let us see what happens next week. We want to definitely see if any of these experts really call them out. Now, I know that they've gone on IG and they've said, yes, we've called this out and we've given the advice. So let's hope that the show's producers or editors or whoever does the filming has put some of that in there, so we, you know, get a sense that no, they really held Chris accountable. But yeah, guys, I think that's all. I don't think I've missed anything else that I wanted to cover tonight. I definitely will be trying to release some other content this week. And if you're new to my channel, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. And of course, hit that like button if you've enjoyed today's live. And guys, I may try and come back next week and just try and actually get my lives each and every week, at least once a week. So we can touch base and discuss. Sorry, guys. I don't know why I've got this mic arm right in front of me, guys. But I will try and be back so we can discuss a few more things as they come up in this series. So guys, take care. I hope you have a good evening, and yeah, stay blessed. All right, guys. Bye.